We live in a world where everything seems to teeter on the edge of emotional collapse. A misplaced criticism, a message seen but left unanswered, a sideways glance, a line that's just too long. And suddenly, we're swept away by an inner storm. But what makes us so vulnerable? Why do so many people, seemingly strong on the outside, fall apart at the slightest setback? The answer, according to the Stoic masters, is not found in the world, but within ourselves. Epictetus once warned us, it's not things that disturb us, but our opinion about them. This means that behind every emotional upheaval lies an interpretation, and that interpretation is almost always distorted, hasty, impulsive. The root of emotional turmoil begins with the illusion that everything should be under our control. We expect traffic to flow, others to respect us, the world to understand us, and everything to fall perfectly into place. And when reality doesn't match our expectations, frustration arises, and with it anger, resentment, anxiety. Deep down, we create an idealized inner world and rebel against the real one. This gap between what is and what we wish it were is the source of much of our suffering. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, faced betrayals, wars, and the loss of loved ones. Yet in his private journal he wrote, "The universe is change, and life is opinion. Everything changes, and everything we feel is born from how we interpret that change. We're easily shaken because we cling to the fleeting. We hold tight to the idea of absolute control, of emotional stability, of constant comfort. And we forget that the nature of life is movement, uncertainty, flow. When we resist this, we clash with reality. Anguish is born from that resistance. But the Stoics invite us to reverse the logic. Instead of fighting what we cannot control, we should govern what is within our reach, our mind, our reactions, our choices. And that begins with a simple yet powerful shift: conscious observation. Observe without judgment. Breathe before reacting. Question your own thoughts before diving into them as if they were absolute truths. How many times has an insult only hurt because you believed it was true? How many times has anxiety grown because you fed scenarios that never even existed? Most destructive emotions are born not from reality, but from imagination. We create monsters in the mind and then try to escape them. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And that sentence, even today, is a mirror to the inner chaos of millions. But there is a way. The first step to mastering your emotions is realizing they are not enemies. They are messages. Anger may be a sign of a crossed boundary. Sadness, a call for rest. Fear, a signal for caution. The problem begins when we let those emotions take the wheel of our lives. When emotion overtakes reason, we lose clarity. And without clarity, we become easy prey to impulsive reactions. That's why the Stoics trained their minds every single day, like a warrior sharpening his sword before battle. They knew the real war wasn't out there, but within. To be unshakable is not to be unfeeling. It's not about suppressing emotions, but understanding their roots, welcoming them with clarity, and above all, not being enslaved by them. The solidity of a person is not in physical strength, but in the ability to remain centered, even when everything around screams otherwise. Self-mastery is not born in a day. It is sculpted, like marble, in the daily friction with chaos. With every moment you choose not to react, with every thought you question, with every emotion you observe before acting, you come closer to freedom. Imagine waking up every day with the clarity that no matter what happens out there, you will always have an inviolable territory, immune to external storms, where serenity reigns. That territory exists, and it is called your inner will. Epictetus, a freed slave who became one of the greatest sages of antiquity, handed us the key to this freedom. Some things are within our control and others are not. It sounds simple, but this distinction is one of the most powerful weapons ever crafted against human suffering. Knowing how to separate what depends on you from what doesn't is the first step toward becoming emotionally invincible. Because it is precisely when we try to control the uncontrollable that we begin to suffer within. Most of our anxiety comes from the unconscious attempt to change what lies outside our reach. Other people's moods, a co-worker's opinion, the direction of a conversation, the result of a medical test, a child's behavior, a past that's already gone, or a future that hasn't even arrived. We struggle, scream on the inside, curse fate, and in return, we receive only frustration, anguish, and exhaustion, all because deep down, we forget that absolute control is an illusion. The only true domain is the self, your mind, your judgment, your attitude, and that no one can take from you. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and disciple of Stoicism, wrote during military campaigns and moments of deep pain, "If it's outside your mind, it's outside your control. The world may crumble. People may betray, chaos may roar, but your mind, if trained, can remain unshaken. And here's the truth. No one is born with that power. It is built. It is forged in daily life, in small choices, in the seconds between a stimulus and a response. Freedom begins when you stop wasting energy trying to change what cannot be changed, and start investing all you have in what can be transformed, your attitude toward what happens. You don't control traffic, but you control how you respond to the delay. You don't control what others say, but you decide how it affects you. You don't control the illness that appears, but you control how you face the treatment. You don't control the end of a relationship, but you can control what you'll do with that pain. This awareness changes everything. It reorganizes your inner world. Anguish gives way to acceptance. Despair transforms into concrete action. Hatred dissolves into clarity. The Stoic is the one who, in the face of tragedy, takes a deep breath, observes, and acts based only on what is within their reach, and nothing more. There is no space for victimhood. There is no room for the illusion of control. There is only inner responsibility, and that responsibility is a power that no one can steal. Epictetus used a powerful metaphor. Imagine a ship at sea. You don't control the winds, the currents, the storms, but you control the sails, the rudder, the direction. While many curse the wind, the wise adjust the sails. That is the secret of those who remain steady amid chaos. They don't deny pain. They don't ignore reality. But they master the only thing they can truly control, the way they choose to live the experience. And that choice is always in your hands. Stoic practice invites us every day to conduct an internal review. Ask yourself in the face of each challenge, is this within my control? If the answer is no, let it go. Let it go with courage, with maturity, with humility. But if the answer is yes, then own it. Act, change, intervene, be the protagonist. This discernment, simple yet profound, is the foundation of true emotional freedom. Without it, we are leaves in the wind. With it, we are roots, firm even in the middle of the storm. To master your emotions, you must first master your focus. And your focus should remain only on what you can influence. The rest is noise. The rest is distraction. The rest is the ego screaming for a power it never had. The unshakable human is the one who walks among the wreckage of the world and still does not lose direction, because they know that direction comes from within, not from without. Have you ever tried to remain calm in the midst of chaos? Have you ever tried to take a deep breath when everything inside you was screaming for a reaction? Have you noticed how most of the time we lose control not because the world provokes us, but because we were never trained to maintain control over ourselves? The truth is, we were taught to master the outside world, to conquer, to accumulate, to win, but we never learned to conquer ourselves. The Stoics knew this 2,000 years ago, and for that reason, they developed one of the most powerful practices of ancient philosophy. Prohairesis, the power to choose how to react, regardless of what happens around you. Prohairesis is, in essence, your inviolable core of freedom. Epictetus said that no one can take from you your ability to decide how to react. They may imprison you, insult you, strip away everything you own, but they can never rip away your prohairesis if you have strengthened it. That is true emotional discipline. It is not about repressing feelings. It is not about becoming cold or apathetic. It's about training the mind the way an athlete trains the body, through repetition, attention, and focus. Every time you choose not to react impulsively, you are strengthening that invisible muscle called self-control. Every time you observe the emotion before you act, you move closer to true freedom. Imagine your emotions as storm clouds passing through the sky. They come, they darken the horizon. Sometimes they thunder, but they pass. The problem arises when you believe that the cloud is the sky, when you identify with anger, anxiety, or frustration and act from that temporary state without questioning, without observing. The Stoic training is precisely about observing, with attention, with presence, with firmness. It is like placing a sentinel at the gate of your mind. Nothing enters without being examined. No emotion rules without being questioned. But how do we train this in practice? The answer lies in the Stoic routine. They began their day with morning meditations, anticipating the challenges that might arise. Marcus Aurelius would write to himself, "Today I will meet ungrateful, selfish, deceitful people, but they cannot harm me because I do not share their values." This mental anticipation prepared the spirit to face the world with serenity. During the day, they practiced constant vigilance of the mind. They observed their thoughts as one would watch a flame, and at the end of the day, they reviewed their actions, their failures, their inner victories, not out of guilt, but for growth, for responsibility. Training the spirit means becoming aware of every small choice. It means choosing not to respond to insult, choosing to maintain dignity even in the face of injustice, breathing when the mind wants to scream, stopping when impulse wants to take over, writing about yourself not for others to see, but to see yourself more clearly. Seneca said the soul needs a mirror, and that mirror is daily self-examination. Without it, we walk blindly. With it, we can see even in the dark. Emotional discipline is not a gift. It is a construction, a constant work. It is the carving of the raw marble of impulsiveness until it reveals the serene statue of wisdom. And like every sculpture, it requires time, patience, persistence. In the hardest moments, when everything in you demands reactivity, remember, this is the training ground. It is in this field that the unshakable are forged, not in calm days, but in storms. The true Stoic warrior is not the one who never feels, but the one who feels and still chooses wisely, who is overtaken by anger, but chooses not to hurt, who is enveloped by sadness, but does not drown, who feels fear, but walks forward. Because they have learned that, yes, emotion is a wave, but the trained soul is the rock, and no wave, no matter how strong, can move a rock that knows its foundation. Few forces are as destructive as the constant need for validation. We live in an age where feeling offended has become almost an emotional addiction, and more dangerously, an automatic mechanism. One off-tone word, a sideways comment, an ambiguous gesture, and there we are, overwhelmed by a sense of injustice, seeking to repair a supposed offense, demanding explanations, insisting on respect. But stop and think, where does this urgency to feel hurt come from? Who really suffers when they allow themselves to be offended? The truth is harsh, yet liberating. The offended suffer not because of what was said, but because of what they believe to be true. What truly hurts is not the criticism from another. It's what that criticism reveals about your own insecurity. Epictetus, with his surgical insight into the human mind, said, "If someone says something about you that is false, why be offended? And if it's true, why be offended? In other words, offense only takes root in those who welcome it. An insult is an arrow launched, but you decide whether it hits the target. And the target, more often than not, is the inflated ego. Emotional vanity is the trap that makes us believe the world owes us respect, recognition, affection. And when that isn't delivered the way we expect, we react like a child denied its will. But the wise are not moved by offense. They observe it with compassion. They know that only those who cling get hurt. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. That sentence holds a transformative truth. True strength lies in remaining centered while everything around you tries to pull you off balance. When you feel offended, you give power to the other. You turn someone's words into a decree over your worth. But a Stoic's identity is not shaped by the opinions of others. It is sculpted by reason, clarity, and self-determination. The offended man is a slave to the image he wants to protect. The free man is the one who knows who he is and does not need to prove anything to anyone. But be careful. Don't confuse honor with vanity. Don't confuse dignity with wounded pride. Defending yourself against real injustice is wisdom. Constantly reacting to every criticism is weakness disguised as virtue. The Stoic chooses his emotional battles wisely. He doesn't go around correcting every misunderstanding, every noise, every wrong opinion about him. He knows that time reveals, character sustains, and truth endures. There's no need to shout. There's no need to justify. It is enough to live with coherence. And when the stones come, because they will, he doesn't bend. He walks. Because what's at stake is not what others think of you. It's what did you choose to do with what they think. Emotional vanity is a golden prison. It makes us appear strong, but inside we're chained. Every compliment inflates us. Every criticism shatters us. It's a roller coaster of unstable self-worth. But there is a way out. The way out is detaching from the victim role. It's accepting that people make mistakes, speak without thinking, project their shadows, and that this has nothing to do with you. The chronic offended person believes everything is personal. The wise know that almost nothing is. Those who hurt you are often just revealing their own chaos. And you have two options: absorb or observe, react or reflect, be wounded or be free. Seneca, with his unshakable clarity, warned us, "It is foolish to suffer before the time, and even more foolish to suffer over mere words." You were not made to be a slave to comments. You were made to be master of your own soul. Offense is not a fact, it is an interpretation, and that interpretation can be chosen. From today forward, every time something wounds you, ask, does this really matter? If the answer comes from ego, breathe. If it comes from reason, act with firmness, but never, ever hand over your peace to someone else. Imagine an ancient castle built with millennia-old stones, surrounded by high walls and reinforced gates. It stands atop a hill. Around it the world may collapse, armies may march, storms may destroy villages, fires may consume forests. But that castle, solid, silent, unshakable, stands firm. Now understand, that castle exists within you. And the Stoics called it the inner citadel. A powerful metaphor to describe the place where your essence, your reason, your center resides. A space that cannot be invaded unless you open the gates. True emotional freedom begins when you choose to live there, and not in the noisy streets of others' approval, uncontrollable desires, or irrational fears. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote in his journal, "People seek retreats in the mountains, the countryside, the sea, but the greatest refuge is within oneself." He knew that no external place is truly safe if the mind is at war, and no place is hostile if your soul is at peace. That's why the Stoic builds his inner fortress. Stone by stone, thought by thought, choice by choice, he reinforces his walls with reason, discipline, and virtue. He does not depend on circumstances to be well, he decides to be well despite the circumstances, but this construction requires effort. It begins with deep self-knowledge. You must understand what destabilizes you. What are the triggers that still breach your walls? A tone of voice, a sudden loss, rejection, injustice? When you identify these vulnerabilities, you don't condemn yourself, you prepare yourself. A good builder knows every flaw in his structure, and so he reinforces the foundations. To be strong is not to never waver, it is to know where you still falter and work on it with humility and firmness. This citadel is also the space where you meet your highest principles. The Stoic does not act based on what he feels, but based on what is right. He has an inner code. He knows what he values. And when the world tries to drag him into chaos, he returns to that code. He reminds himself, I am responsible only for my actions. That reminder is like a torch in the dark. It lights the path, it warms the soul, it drives away inner monsters. Without that code, any wind topples you. With it, even the hurricane shows you respect. Building this fortress also involves conscious visualization. Marcus Aurelius practiced this. Before facing the day, he imagined everything that could go wrong. Rude people, disappointments, losses, but not to suffer in advance. He did it so that when chaos arrived, his mind would already be ready. It was like rehearsing serenity before the battle. This practice is called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It is not pessimism, it is strategy, mental reinforcement, the art of being prepared for everything and dominated by nothing. And what sustains this fortress on the worst days? The awareness that everything essential is within. You may lose money, status, relationships, power, but if you do not lose yourself, you are still whole. Seneca wrote, "He who relies on luck for peace is condemned to eternal war." That's why the Stoic does not build his house upon the sand of circumstances. He digs deep. He roots himself in timeless values, courage, temperance, justice, wisdom, values that don't shift with the wind, that don't collapse with the headlines, that don't yield to fear. Once built, this fortress becomes a beacon. You become a reference for those who are adrift. Your presence becomes peace, your attitude an example, your calm a compass. The world will still be the same, unpredictable, imperfect, unstable, but you will be different. You will be a rock in the current. And that rock is not formed by chance. It is formed with every thought you choose not to feed, with every emotion you decide to observe instead of follow, with every moment you choose to act like someone who has understood. True strength is not in controlling the world, but in mastering yourself. Fear, that primitive, silent and dominant force that lives in all of us. It disguises itself as caution, hides behind anxiety, wears the mask of perfectionism. But deep down, it is fear, always fear, that drives a great portion of human decisions. Fear of failure, fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough, fear of the unknown, and above all, the fear of death. Fear is like a shadow that grows when the light of reason fades. But the Stoics stared that shadow in the face. They didn't deny it, they studied it, and instead of running away, they learned to turn fear into a teacher. Epictetus gives us a disarming insight. It is not death that should concern us, but the fear of death. In other words, the problem isn't in life's inevitable events, but in how we experience them. Fear is born from the attempt to control the uncontrollable. It is the echo of our fragility in the face of fate. But rather than being conquered by force, fear must be understood. Because where there is fear, there is attachment. And where there is attachment, there is suffering. The Stoic doesn't aim to eliminate fear, but to illuminate it. He walks toward it with clarity because he knows that what we fear the most is exactly what we need to face in order to be free. Seneca teaches us that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. How many sleepless nights over situations that never came to pass? How many decisions frozen by monsters created in the mind alone? How many opportunities buried under the assumption of future failure? Fear is a brilliant tragedy writer, and the mind, a loyal stage. But Stoic practice breaks that cycle. It invites us to bring reason to center stage, to ask ourselves, is this a fact or a supposition? Is this within my control or not? These questions are lanterns in the darkness of fear. They restore our agency. Marcus Aurelius faced bloody battles, plagues, political betrayals, and still wrote with serenity. You have power over your mind, not external events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He understood that fear lurks where clarity is absent, and so he cultivated his mind like one tends a garden, removing weeds, choosing thoughts with care, meditating on the impermanence of all things. The Stoic embraces mortality not as a tragedy, but as liberation. He looks at death every day, and it is precisely because of that that he lives with greater intensity, courage, and presence. But how, in practice, do we turn fear into power? First, by naming it. Fear cannot withstand the truth. Say to it, I see you. Say, I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of being alone. I'm afraid of losing everything. Naming takes fear out of the dark. Then challenge it with reason. Adieu, what's the worst that can happen? And if it happens, can I handle it? Almost always, the answer is yes. Because you are stronger than you think, because inside you burns a flame that never goes out, the flame of resilience, of adaptability, of overcoming. Next, train yourself in gradual exposure. The Stoic doesn't flee from discomfort, he seeks it out. He fasts to remember he can live with less. He sleeps on the ground to remember luxury doesn't own him. He exposes himself to cold, to hunger, to silence, to criticism, not out of masochism but out of wisdom, because he knows that real life will demand resilience. And the more you prepare voluntarily, the less power fear will have over you. This is how terror becomes strength, through familiarity, through rehearsal, through active courage. Not the kind that arises in the absence of fear, but the kind that appears when, despite fear, you move forward anyway. Do you want to become unshakable? Then look at what you fear most and walk toward it, one step per day, one thought at a time, one silent victory after another, because fear, when faced with awareness, becomes an ally. It points to where you need to grow. It shows where you're still chained. It reveals where your next freedom lives. And that freedom begins when you understand that fear will never be greater than your decision not to be ruled by it. Imagine if you could look at every event in your life, the good, the bad, the unexpected, and say with a full heart, I accept. I not only endure, I love. This is the core of one of the most transformative ideas in Stoic philosophy. Amor fati, love your fate. Not as apathetic resignation, but as an act of profound courage, as a pact with reality. The Stoics did not preach conformity. They didn't say accept everything and stop fighting. They said fight where you have power and accept with dignity what lies beyond your strength. And more than that, turn that acceptance into a source of strength. Love what is, not only what you wish it were. Nietzsche, centuries after the Stoics, reignited this concept with fire. Amor fati. Let that be my formula for greatness. Not to wish for anything to be different, not forward, not backward, not for all eternity, not merely to bear what is necessary, but to love it. Now, this posture is a fatal blow to modern victimhood, because it demands maturity, it demands ego transcendence, it demands surrender without giving up. You are not surrendering to pain, you are dancing with it. You are not accepting failure out of weakness, you are integrating the experience as part of your strength. But what does it mean in practice to live amor fati? It means welcoming the unexpected with presence. It means looking at loss and asking, what is this teaching me? It means accepting delay, rejection, silence, bankruptcy, illness, and death as legitimate parts of life, not as errors in the universe. Amor fati is the vision of the whole. It is realizing that even what wounds you now can become, later, the foundation of something stronger within you. It's understanding that there is no human life without pain, without chaos, without change. And if that is inevitable, the wisest thing is to become intimate with the inevitable. Marcus Aurelius, amid plague, war, and grief, wrote, "The nature of the universe brings nothing that is not for the common good. If it happened, it was meant to happen." He wasn't naive. He was deeply wise. He knew that fighting what already is, what has already happened, is the fastest road to madness. But accepting, integrating, and growing with it, that is the road to transcendence. And here lies the secret. You don't have to like what happens, but you can choose to love it as part of your evolution. Active acceptance is not passivity, it is clarity. You accept what cannot be changed, and change what must not remain. You welcome pain, and turn it into insight. You honor frustration, and transform it into maturity. This is the alchemy of amor fati, the ability to extract gold from mud, light from darkness, meaning from loss. The Stoic doesn't seek an ideal world. He lives in the real world with eyes wide open. And precisely because of that, he is powerful. Where others flail, he breathes. Where others curse, he reflects. Where others give up, he acts with awareness. Want a simple yet profound Stoic practice? Every morning upon waking, say to yourself, "Today, only what must happen will happen, and I choose to love all of it." And at night, when reviewing your day, look even at your pain with gratitude. This made me stronger. This revealed something to me. This shaped my spirit. Over time, you'll realize that nothing throws you off balance anymore. Not betrayal, not loss, not failure, because you are no longer a slave to expectation. You have become an ally of reality. There is a moment, almost imperceptible, between what happens and what you do with it. Between the word that wounds and the response you choose. Between the pain that arrives and the meaning you assign to it. That space, that sacred second, is where all your freedom resides. It is where the ordinary man reacts and the Stoic decides. Emotional mastery is not built solely through meditation, reading, or philosophy. It manifests, above all, in the practice of now. In the moments when you are pressured, insulted, threatened, challenged, and still choose calm, silence, and conscious action. Epictetus said, "When something happens, the disturbance doesn't come from the event itself, but from your judgment about it." And how do we judge something? In the heat of the moment, the first impulse is usually emotional, impulsive, automatic. The mind, full of old patterns, takes control and drags us into reactions we later regret. That's why the Stoics develop practices to deal with emotions in real time. Simple yet powerful techniques, ones that interrupt the flow of reactivity and return control to consciousness. And among all these practices, 3 stand out as pillars of a trained spirit: silence, breath, and lucid action. Silence is the art of not responding at the speed of emotion. It is the shield of wisdom. When you choose silence, you're not avoiding, you are preparing. You are listening to what lies behind the words, the gestures, the tension. You are reconnecting with your inner citadel. How many conflicts could be avoided with just a few seconds of silence? How many words spoken in anger were merely echoes of one's own pain? The Stoic understands that silence is an active choice, a fertile ground for reason to blossom. And more than that, it is a sign of strength. Because only those who own themselves can endure emptiness without rushing to fill it with impulse. Breathing, in turn, is the point of contact between body and soul. It's the secret button of the nervous system. When you breathe deeply, something shifts. The storm subsides. The blood flows more gently. clarity returns. The Stoics used breath as an anchor. They inhaled deeply, held it, and exhaled slowly. And in that small ritual, they dissipated the fog of uncontrolled emotion. Conscious breathing is a physical reminder that you are in command. Even when everything around you feels lost, even when your heart races, even when your muscles tighten, to breathe is to say, I am here, I am whole, I choose what comes next. And then comes lucid action. After silence and breath, the Stoic does not remain frozen. He acts, but he acts with direction, with firmness, with intention. He does not move out of revenge, ego, or fear. He moves with reason, with justice, with virtue. Marcus Aurelius faced decisions that could cost thousands of lives, and yet he wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." He acted, but with purpose, with serenity. Lucid action is the fruit of inner discipline. It is not the absence of emotion. It is emotion channeled. It is courage without aggression. It is firmness without brutality. It is clarity in the midst of fire. These three practices, silence, breath, and action, are accessible to all. They require no masters, temples, or books, only attention and commitment to your own growth. Each time you choose silence over shouting, breath over exploding, action over reaction, you are shaping your soul. You are building stone by stone your unshakable self. And don't be fooled. The world will test you. It will provoke you. It will press on your wounds. But each test will be an opportunity for practice. And practice makes mastery, mastery of the self, pain, that inevitable visitor of human existence, that presence which sooner or later knocks at the door of the soul, with or without invitation, with or without warning. It may come in the form of loss, rejection, illness, failure, injustice. And when it arrives, it drags along certainty, plans, stability. It disarms us, it breaks us. And yet it carries within itself one of life's greatest paradoxes. It is precisely pain that has the power to make us stronger, more lucid, more virtuous. The Stoics knew this, and that's why they didn't run from suffering. They looked it in the eye and made it a teacher. Seneca, perhaps the most poetic among the Stoics, wrote, "No man becomes extraordinary by living in comfort and pleasure. It is trials that reveal who we are." And he knew what he was talking about. Falsely accused, exiled, pressured to take his own life. His biography is a hymn to dignity in the face of pain. He didn't deny suffering, he sublimated it, transformed agony into reflection, loss into wisdom, death into legacy. And this is what the Stoics teach us. Pain does not have to be an end. It can be a beginning. Pain has a language of its own. It shows what truly matters. It silences the noise. It dismantles the ego. It strips away the masks. When everything is fine, it's easy to maintain composure, speak beautifully, appear centered. But it is in the abyss that the soul is tested. It is in loss that truth is revealed. It is in crisis that virtue either shines or crumbles. Suffering, when faced with Stoic eyes, becomes a forge, like fire that hardens steel, like the chisel that sculpts marble. You enter it as raw material and emerge as polished essence. But be careful. This is not about romanticizing pain. The Stoics were not masochists. They did not seek out suffering. But when it came, and it always comes, they used it, drew strength from it. They knew that the value of life does not lie in avoiding pain, but in knowing what to do with it when it comes. And it will come, because to live is to expose yourself, to love, to risk, to try, to lose. And each time you pass through a dark valley, you discover a little more of your own depth, of your own strength, of your true identity. Epictetus was born a slave. He was tortured. He lived with a damaged body, and still he taught with conviction. No pain is greater than your ability to endure it. He understood that suffering is real, but also temporary, and that the human spirit, when nourished by reason and courage, is greater than any tragedy. The Stoics didn't wait for the pain to pass to find peace. They cultivated peace within the pain. Because they knew serenity doesn't depend on the absence of suffering, but on the presence of awareness. Do you want to become unshakable? Then accept this fact. There will be pain, but you can choose what it makes of you. You can surrender to bitterness or allow it to purify you. You can victimize yourself or you can grow. You can look to the sky in despair or you can dig within yourself for the answer. And that answer, in Stoicism, will always come with a question. What virtue can I practice now? Courage, patience, resilience, humility, gratitude. Every pain is a call to elevate your being. And time. Time. It is an ally to those who go through pain with wisdom. Because everything passes. Everything changes. What consumes you today may tomorrow become the scar that makes you beautiful. The pain that now burns may later illuminate. The suffering that today feels unbearable may become the seed of unshakable peace, but only if you don't waste your suffering. Only if you choose to grow from it. Only if you trust that there is a greater strength within you. A strength you may only discover when everything seems to fall apart. Few things have as much power to unbalance us as relationships. We can be masters of logic, disciplined at work, strong in the face of physical pain, but all it takes is a word from someone we love, an unexpected silence, a criticism from someone close, and our entire inner world trembles. Reason gives way to impulse. Clarity dissolves into anguish. Pride responds before the soul even understands. It is in this unstable ground of human connection that the true Stoic is forged, not as someone cold or distant, but as someone who loves without being dominated, who gives without losing themselves, who understands without getting lost. Marcus Aurelius, who lived with betrayals within his own court, wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, expect to meet ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, envious, and malicious people." And even so, he chose not to be corrupted by them. He understood that others' behavior is not a reflection of our worth, but of their own inner world. That clarity is the Stoic shield. To know that what the other does speaks about them, and what you do in response speaks about you. In relationships, we project and we get disappointed. We expect and we suffer. We love, and sometimes we lose ourselves. But the Stoic learns to love with emotional responsibility. He doesn't love expecting return, acceptance, or reciprocity as a condition for peace. He loves because to love is a virtue, not a craving. He forgives not out of weakness, but out of wisdom, because he understands that resentment is a prison he alone chooses to lock or unlock. He doesn't try to control others, but rather masters his own heart, especially when wounded. And what about anger, envy, disappointment? These are all legitimate emotions, but dangerous when they take the wheel. Anger, for example, can be a wildfire, but it can also be a torch, if well directed. The Stoic watches the emotion arise and asks, is it leading me to justice or to revenge? He knows that the worst decisions are made in the heat of resentment. That's why he practices emotional distancing, not from people, but from the mental confusion they can cause. A step back, a breath, a silence, and clarity returns. In emotional bonds, the Stoic also knows that impermanence is the rule. People change, feelings shift, bonds break, and that's not a tragedy, it's nature. Epictetus said, "Do you love a crystal cup? Remember it is fragile." And with people, it is the same. To love is to remember impermanence and still choose to be present, without illusions, without guarantees, without sick attachment. Just conscious presence, gratitude for the moment, mature detachment, Because true love doesn't demand possession. It blossoms in the soil of freedom, and when we are betrayed, abandoned, disrespected, the impulse screams for justice, for reaction, for revenge. But the Stoic hears the scream and asks, does this elevate me or diminish me? He knows that true justice begins with self-mastery, that sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all, that there is more strength in someone who walks away in peace than in someone who shouts in rage. He doesn't ignore the pain, he honors it, but chooses to grow from it, not to retaliate because of it. Life is made of meetings and farewells, of bonds that heal and others that hurt, of connections that uplift and others that test us. The Stoic moves through all of them with dignity, because his worth doesn't depend on others' opinions. His peace doesn't rest on someone else's harmony. His love is not conditioned by external acceptance. He has built his inner citadel, and even in the most turbulent moments of human relationships, he remains whole. And then comes the moment when everything collapses. The ground that once felt solid cracks. The routine that seemed safe breaks, bonds shake, health fails, the future turns to smoke. And what do you do when chaos arrives? When life doesn't just threaten, it strikes. It is in those moments, not in peaceful days, that the true Stoic is revealed, because anyone can appear strong when the sea is calm. But only the trained spirit stands firm when the storm swallows the horizon. And it's not about denying the chaos, it's about being the order within it. Marcus Aurelius, amid plagues, political betrayals, and border wars, wrote, "The life of a man is what his thoughts make of it." He didn't say that from the comfort of a palace. He said it with hands dirty from duty, with the weight of an empire on his shoulders. And even so, he kept a clear mind, because he understood that the world may burn, but if the soul is serene, no fire can consume what is essential. Staying calm in chaos is a skill, and like every skill, it can be trained. The Stoic begins this training every day. He rises already prepared for the unexpected. He is not surprised by failure, by attack, by downfall. He has already considered them, meditated on them, anticipated them. This is not pessimism, it is emotional preparedness. Chaos only destabilizes those deceived by the illusion of permanence, those who thought everything would last, those who believed they had total control. The Stoic, on the other hand, lives in peace precisely because from the start he accepted the unpredictability of life. But what to do when chaos has already arrived, when there is no more time to prepare, when the storm has already engulfed you? The Stoic response always begins with a pause, a silence, a return to the center. Breathe. Ask yourself, what is within my control right now? And act on that, only that. Yes, the chaos is vast, but you don't need to solve it all at once. You only need to act with clarity on the next step, one by one serene decision after another, and in doing so, even surrounded by destruction, you begin the rebuilding. The Stoic in chaos is like the captain of a ship in a storm. He does not scream. He does not blame the sea. He does not curse the wind. He adjusts the sails, issues firm orders, protects his crew. And when the storm passes, because it always passes, he emerges not just alive, but stronger, wiser, more respected. That image is not fantasy. It's practice. It's philosophy in motion. You can be that captain. You can be that safe harbor for yourself, for others, for the world, and more. Staying calm in chaos is a service, a gift, an anchor to those around you. When you refuse to be dragged under, when you hold your dignity amid the wreckage, you inspire without saying a word. You become a reference, a lighthouse, a pillar, not to appear superior. But because you understand that, when the world goes mad, sanity is a revolutionary act, and the first step of that revolution begins within. So, the next time everything seems to fall apart, when life corners you, remember, you are not the chaos. You are the one who walks through it. You are the still point in the middle of the storm. You are the one who acts when others freeze. You are the Stoic, the one who feels, suffers, trembles inside, but decides with clarity. Because you've trained your soul to be steady when everything else shakes. Because you've built within yourself a place where not even the collapse of the world can enter. We have reached the summit of the mountain. After facing anger, fear, pain, loss, and chaos, there appears at last the figure of the one who has learned to remain standing while the world twisted around him. The one who fell, yes, but never got lost. Who cried, but never bowed. Who was betrayed, but never stopped trusting his own light. This is the unshakable man, not because he is immune to suffering, but because he has transmuted it, not because he is perfect, but because he is whole, a being forged in the fire of his own mind, shaped by his falls, trained in silence, a master of himself. The unshakable man is not arrogant, he is serene. He doesn't need to prove anything. He doesn't shout to be heard. He doesn't beg to be loved. He walks with steadiness because he knows his own worth. And that worth doesn't come from status, appearance, or wealth. It comes from coherence, from loyalty to principles that don't bend with the winds of circumstance. He acts with justice even when no one is watching. He chooses temperance even when the world invites excess. He cultivates wisdom because he knows the world is a current, and those who don't learn drown. This man, or woman, or any human being who chooses this path is a beacon in a time when many are lost. He is not perfect, but he is present. He does not control everything, but he masters what matters. He does not avoid pain, but he walks through it with his head held high, and above all, he understands that life is not a field of comfort, but a training ground for the soul. Each day, an exercise. Each loss, a lesson. Each frustration, a chance to overcome. Each silence, an invitation to introspection. The unshakable man lives with intention. He wakes with purpose. He acts with clarity. He speaks with precision. He chooses with awareness. He understands that the world can be harsh, but that doesn't give him permission to harden his heart. He loves deeply, but without dependence. He leads with firmness, but without imposition. He forgives because he understands that holding on to resentment is chaining oneself. He takes a stand, but with humility, and when he fails, he does not hide. He learns, he rises, and he moves on. What makes him invincible is not the absence of pain, but the way he transforms it. What makes him free is not having control over everything, but living at peace with what cannot be controlled. What makes him rare is not being admired, but being whole when no one is watching. And when the world tries to drag him back into mediocrity, into rage, into despair, he will smile, because he knows himself, because he's been there, and chose to no longer live at the mercy of external tides. This construction is eternal. It has no ending point. The unshakable soul is not born ready. It is carved day by day in invisible choices. In thoughts, we decide not to feed. In emotions, we choose to understand rather than repress. In words, we choose not to say. In silences, we learn to value. In boundaries, we finally learn to set, and in actions, whether quiet or grand, that say, I am not a slave to the world. I am the master of myself. And if you've come this far, know this, that strength is already inside you. It always has been. What changes now is that you know. You know where to look. You know how to cultivate it. You know that philosophy is not theory. It is living practice. That stoicism is not coldness, it is freedom. That serenity is not passivity, it is centered strength. That self-control is not repression, it is conscious choice. And that life, with all its pain, injustice, and chaos, can still be the stage of a virtuous, firm, meaningful, and deeply yours existence.